Christmas has always been about family, about gathering together, sharing laughter, passing plates of food, and remembering what truly matters. But last year, my own daughter looked me in the eye and said the words no mother should ever hear. "You're not welcome this Christmas." The sting of that sentence nearly broke me. But what she didn't know was that Christmas carries its own kind of truth, and sometimes it comes with a knock at the door no one expects. Tell me, have you ever been shut out, only to return stronger? Share it below. Now, let's begin today's story. It was early December when the phone rang. I answered with a smile, expecting to hear my daughter's familiar excitement about the holidays. Every year, she would call me early in the month, asking about recipes, debating over decorations, and confirming what time the family would arrive. I thought this year would be the same, but her tone was different. Flat, careful. "Mom," she began, "we've decided to keep Christmas smaller this year." I waited for her to continue, already rehearsing in my head which side dish I could bring, which dessert I might bake. But her next words hit like ice water. "Just close family. We think it's best if you don't come." For a moment, I thought I had misheard. "Not come?" I repeated slowly. "Sweetheart, I am close family. I'm your mother." The silence on the other end stretched. When she finally spoke again, her words cut deep. "You're not welcome this Christmas." I felt my chest cave in, my breath catching. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, staring at the holiday lights flickering in the window. Those words, spoken so casually, so firmly, echoed in my head until the silence on the line was unbearable. I hung up without another word. The days that followed blurred together. Every commercial on television seemed to taunt me with images of happy families around their trees. Every neighbor hanging garlands, every carol playing from store speakers. It all twisted the knife. At night, I sat by my own tree, its lights glowing softly in the darkness, and I wondered how it had come to this. I remembered Christmas mornings when she was a little girl, how her eyes would sparkle as she tore open presents I had stayed up wrapping until dawn. I remembered baking cookies together, flour dusting her cheeks, laughter filling the kitchen. I remembered stringing stockings, making cocoa, keeping traditions alive even when money was tight. I had built those memories brick by brick, and now she had locked me out of the very celebration I created for her. The ache was heavy, not just from the rejection, but from the thought that all those years had somehow meant so little to her. I thought of the sacrifices I had made to give her magic, the nights I went without sleep, the times I tightened my belt so she could have gifts under the tree, and now, after everything, I was told I didn't belong. I replayed the call in my mind endlessly, wondering what I had done wrong. Was I too old, too quiet? Too much of a reminder of the past she wanted to forget? But as the days passed and the calendar crept closer to December 25th, something inside me shifted. The grief settled, and in its place grew a kind of resolve. Because Christmas isn't just about lights and gifts. It's about presence, about being there. And though my daughter thought she could erase me with a few cruel words, she had forgotten one thing. Mothers don't disappear so easily. Sometimes presence comes in the form of a knock at the door, and sometimes that knock is louder than all the words meant to keep you out. The days after that phone call felt like walking through molasses, slow, heavy, suffocating. I watched from my window as neighbors strung up twinkling lights, their laughter floating through the crisp December air. Couples carried in fir trees strapped to their car roofs. Children ran by with scarves trailing behind them, clutching candy canes and giggling with excitement. And then there was me, alone in a quiet house that had once been the heart of Christmas. I tried to keep busy. I baked a batch of cookies, the kind my daughter used to beg for when she was little. But when I pulled them out of the oven, the smell hit me like a wave of memory, and I had to sit down, tears blurring my vision. What use were cookies when the very person I'd baked them for didn't want me there? I wrapped a few small gifts for neighbors, forcing myself to tape ribbons and write tags. But with each fold of the paper, I felt the ache of knowing there was no spot for me under my daughter's tree this year. Meanwhile, whispers filtered back to me through relatives and social media. My daughter was bustling with preparations. The big dinner was planned, her in-laws invited, the table set with new china she was proud to show off. I saw a picture online, her standing proudly by the fireplace, stockings hung in perfect order, and not a single trace of me in sight. The sting deepened. It wasn't just that I wasn't invited. It was the way she erased me, as if I had never been part of her Christmas at all. One night I sat in front of my tree, its glow reflecting off the ornaments collected over decades. I picked up one, a clay angel she had made in elementary school, its paint chipped but still beautiful. I remembered her handing it to me with little hands, her face beaming as she said, "This one's for you, Mommy." I clutched that ornament, and something inside me shifted. If she could forget the roots of her Christmas, it could not. If she wanted to shut the door, I still knew how to knock. The decision was quiet, but firm. I wasn't going to sit alone while my family gathered without me. I wasn't going to fade into the background of a holiday I had poured my soul into for decades. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to argue, but I wanted to be present, to remind her that mothers don't just vanish when it's convenient. So on Christmas Eve, while snow dusted the sidewalks and carols played softly on the radio, I pulled on my coat, picked up a small gift bag I had prepared, and slipped the angel ornament inside. I locked my door behind me, took a deep breath of the cold night air, and headed toward her house. She may have told me I wasn't welcome, but Christmas has a way of opening doors, even if it starts with a knock no one expects. The street was alive with Christmas Eve warmth. Windows glowed golden, silhouettes of families gathering around trees flickered behind curtains. I walked slowly, clutching the small gift bag, the angel ornament inside pressing against the tissue paper like a heartbeat. When I reached her house, the sound of laughter drifted out, muffled but clear. I stood on the porch for a moment, staring at the wreath on her door. It was new, bright, and perfect. Nothing like the old homemade ones we used to craft together when she was a child. My hand trembled as I raised it. For a second, I almost turned away. Almost. But then I thought of that phone call. "You're not welcome this Christmas." And I knocked. The sound echoed through the house. The laughter inside dimmed. Footsteps approached. The door swung open, and there she was, my daughter, dressed elegantly, cheeks flushed from the warmth of the fire. Her smile froze the moment she saw me. "Mom," she said, startled. Behind her, heads turned, guests peered curiously toward the door. The room fell strangely quiet. I held out the small gift bag. My voice was steady, though my heart pounded. "Merry Christmas!" For a long moment, she just stared at me. Her eyes darted to the bag, then back to my face. I saw a storm of emotions flicker. Shock, irritation, guilt. "Mom," she said finally, lowering her voice. "We talked about this. I told you." "Yes," I interrupted gently. "You told me I wasn't welcome. I heard you. But Christmas isn't about shutting people out. It's about opening the door." So I knocked. The words hung in the air. The guests shifted uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. Her husband cleared his throat, clearly caught off guard. She looked back into the room as if weighing her pride against the eyes of everyone watching. Then she stepped aside reluctantly. "Come in." I crossed the threshold, the warmth of the house hitting me all at once. The smell of roasted turkey, pine garland, cinnamon candles. It was the scent of Christmas, the scent of belonging. But the air was tense. Conversations had stilled. Eyes followed me as I removed my coat. I could feel the judgment, the questions, the unspoken, "What is she doing here?" My daughter forced a smile, guiding me toward the living room. "This is my mother," she announced stiffly. She decided to join us tonight. There it was, that subtle jab, that attempt to frame my presence as intrusion instead of invitation. I simply smiled, holding the gift bag a little tighter. I wasn't here to argue. I wasn't here to fight. I was here because mothers belong, even if their children forget it. I sat quietly in a chair by the tree, the angel ornament resting in my lap, and though the tension lingered like frost on the edges of the room, I felt something steady inside me. I had shown up. I had knocked. I had refused to be erased. And that, in itself, was victory. Dinner that night was unlike any other Christmas I had ever known. The table was beautifully set. Crystal glasses, polished silver, candles flickering softly, but the warmth that should have filled the room was missing. Instead, there was a stiffness in the air, a tension hanging heavy like fog. I sat near the end of the table, the angel ornament still tucked in my bag beside me. My daughter avoided my eyes, focusing on passing dishes, refilling glasses, laughing too loudly at jokes that didn't land. Her husband tried to keep conversation moving, but even his voice carried an edge of unease. The guests weren't sure what to do. Some offered polite smiles, asking me how I was doing, clearly trying to bridge the gap. Others kept their distance, whispering to each other when they thought I wasn't looking. I answered kindly when spoken to, but mostly I let the silence speak. I wasn't there to beg for acceptance. I wasn't there to prove my worth. I was there because I belonged, whether they admitted it or not. At one point, my daughter glanced at me and quickly looked away, her fork clinking against her plate. The guilt was written across her face, though she tried to hide it beneath chatter about recipes and decorations. I thought back to years past, Christmas dinners where I had cooked for hours, making sure everyone had their favorite dish. The laughter, the warmth, the traditions I had kept alive year after year. And now, here I was, treated like a stranger at the very table I had once built. But there was power in my presence. Every time she glanced my way, every time her voice faltered mid-sentence, I knew she felt it too. She had told me I wasn't welcome, and yet, here I was. The meal carried on, the weight of unspoken words heavier than the food itself. Finally, as dessert was served, one of the guests broke the silence. "It's wonderful to see 3 generations at this table," he said warmly, nodding toward me. "It makes Christmas feel complete." The comment hung in the air like a spark, small but undeniable. My daughter's cheeks flushed. She forced a smile, murmuring something about family being important. I caught her eyes then, just for a moment, and in that glance I saw the crack in her pride. Guilt, regret, maybe even shame. I didn't press it. I didn't need to. Because sometimes the quiet presence of truth does more than any argument ever could. As plates were cleared and coffee poured, the conversation slowly softened. Guests began including me, asking about old traditions, laughing at stories from past Christmases. My daughter joined in, but her laughter was thinner now, her eyes distant. By the time dinner ended, the tension had loosened, but the lesson lingered. My presence had changed the night. She had tried to erase me, but my knock on the door had written me back into the story, and whether she admitted it or not, she knew it. When I returned home later that night, I sat in my living room, the glow of my tree filling the quiet house. The angel ornament, once wrapped in tissue, now hung on a branch, its chipped paint catching the light. I thought back to the knock on her door, the look on her face, the silence that fell over the table when I walked in, and then the small shifts, the way she couldn't quite meet my eyes, the way her laughter faltered, the way guilt crept into her smile. It hadn't been easy. Every moment of that evening carried the weight of rejection, but it also carried something else, presence. I had shown up, and that mattered more than all the words that had tried to keep me away. For years, I had believed Christmas was about perfection, the perfect dinner, the perfect decorations, the perfect family photo. But sitting alone with my thoughts, I realized something different. Christmas isn't about perfection. It's about persistence, about showing up for the people you love even when they fail to show up for you. My daughter's words, "You're not welcome," had tried to erase me. They had tried to turn me into a ghost in the very story I had written for her childhood, but the will of a mother is stronger than that. I refused to be erased, and though she hadn't said the words out loud, I knew she felt it. The knock on the door had reminded her of something she'd forgotten. I am her mother. I always will be. That bond cannot be broken by pride, or by embarrassment, or by the cruel idea that love has an expiration date. Perhaps one day she will apologize. Perhaps not. But either way, the lesson was clear. I didn't go to that house for food or gifts. I went to remind her, and maybe even myself, that love shows up even when it isn't invited. Love doesn't vanish when it's told it isn't welcome. Love knocks, patiently, steadily, until the door opens again. And when it does, even if the air is tense, even if the smiles are forced, love still sits at the table. As I looked at that little clay angel shining on my tree, I whispered to myself, I was there. And that was enough, because sometimes the greatest victory isn't in being celebrated. It's in refusing to disappear. So here's what I've learned. Sometimes the hardest words come from the people you love most. Being told I wasn't welcome at Christmas nearly broke me, but when I knocked on that door, I realized something powerful. Love doesn't vanish just because someone tries to shut it out. Respect and family aren't about who sets the table or who decides the guest list. They're about presence. And sometimes the simple act of showing up, calmly, quietly, with dignity, is the greatest reminder of all. My daughter may not have expected me that night, but she will never forget the knock on her door. Tell me, have you ever been excluded, only to prove you belonged all along? Share your story in the comments, and stay tuned, because more tales of quiet justice are still to come.